The unicorn ambition changes everything, because if you're building a business that, like, even from day one, you want to get to 7 figures or you want to exit at some point, that changes everything about how you position yourself now. And I think most women sit and wait to like earn the right to take up a particular space, whereas brand positioning is all about like claiming it.
Welcome to Zero to Rockstar Coaching Business, the podcast for coaches that want to bring consistent clients into their orbit. I'm your host, Leanne Sia, business coach and hype woman, ready to help you step into your big deal energy and close the gap between qualifying as a coach and creating the impact, income and freedom that you know you're meant to have. Let's do this. Hello, my darling. This week I am chatting to the incredible Emma Gage of The Wild Ones. She helps women with unicorn ambitions to create high value positioning for their business that changes fucking everything. Emma's spent the past 2 decades working in strategy and communications for high value innovation led brands like Nike, like Google, like L'Oreal, Unilever, and even Disney. You need to pay attention to Emma because she's a whiz at sniffing out new opportunities and different ways to land your brand for maximum impact. This is the come to Jesus talk that you didn't know that you needed for your brand, for your business, and for your life. Welcome to the podcast, Emma. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Really good.
Wonderful. Where are you joining us from in the world?
I am in Brighton in the UK.
Oh, very nice. Emma, please tell us about you. You've got an amazing business at the moment. You also have like hella gorgeous background, like your back career. It reads like something that could be in friggin' Forbes magazine or like, it's just, when I looked at your bio and saw the kind of the people that you'd been working with, I was like, oh my God, she's clearly the real deal. Can you tell us about you, please, Emma?
Yes, I will do. Yeah. So I'm Emma Gage. I'm the founder of The Wild Ones, and we're a brand strategy consultancy for female entrepreneurs. So across products and services, any stage of business. And my background is brand consultancy with brands. So I've always been a strategist. So for like 2 decades, basically, a decade in London, a decade working in Asia. And I have been a strategist in advertising, in media, so doing a lot of communications and brand work, and also in products and service innovation, all for brands like Nike, Adidas, L'Oreal, Unilever, kind of Samsung, Google, Netflix. So some great brands, and done a variety of things, but always been in a kind of strategic role.
Oh my God. I think what I love about you, Emma, is that yes, you've worked with these hugely successful, like the creme de la creme brands, but also you're equally as comfortable working with female entrepreneurs at the beginning stages of their business while they're building out like multi 6-7 figure businesses. Distinguish between like the strategy, the different levels of kind of entrepreneurship. Like, how does that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a different strategy, but I think what's important to me is that I talk about having like unicorn ambitions. So your unicorn being you want to build $1 billion business. Now, I don't want to build $1 billion business. Most of my clients don't want to really build $1 billion business, but it means just about having like significant aspirations for the business. So beyond just selling services. And I think you can have that aspiration at the start, in the middle, or when you're thinking you might want to sell the business, like you've been in it 10 years or whatever stage. So I work with a lot of pre-revenue businesses, and we're mapping out like the brand positioning, we're mapping out the opportunity space for the business, we're mapping out the business model for the business, how they're going to kind of market. But like we'll always put a big disruptive idea behind that business, whether it's personal brand, business brand, both. And yeah, think about how to activate it. And obviously the way you do that is very different depending on how established you are, how big a community you've got, whether you've got aspirations to evolve like the type of work you do or evolve your profile. So it's more about understanding like what the priority is at different stages. But ultimately you still need a positioning and a kind of big idea behind it.
Obviously, we're going to go into that in a moment, but I just need to talk about unicorn ambition. Like, I bloody love that, Emma. That is like singing to me straight away. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, I think a lot of, and I was talking primarily, when I talk about business advice aimed at women, it's generally in the online space. I think a lot of the advice is about like selling a service. So you become a coach or you're a designer or kind of whatever it is. And it's all about how you get the wheels turning, how you start selling your services, how you sell and repeat, how you scale that. And it can feel a little bit like you have to do your time at different levels. So I, like you say, stellar background, but I retrained as a coach at the start of lockdown along with everybody else. And I was selling like coaching for a while. I was working primarily with like senior women in burnout. And yeah, I felt like I'd literally started from the beginning. So I hired coaches. I consumed every single masterclass under the sun. I was completely overwhelmed with the advice, felt like I knew nothing, certainly wasn't owning my experience, was literally starting from the beginning and felt like I had to do my time because I didn't have enough followers or I didn't have this, I didn't have that, but had an absolute killer background. But I think this space makes you feel like nothing. A lot of my clients
absolutely.
now, I know a lot of my clients now have been absolute corporate rock stars, and yet whatever field they're in, have felt like they're starting again. Now they've got their own business. So whatever stage of business you're at, you can have significant ambition. And actually, if you've got a 20-year corporate career and your company's ridiculous that you would just be starting from scratch, selling your coaching for peanuts and just think, well, I've got to work my way up. And actually, your brand is all about owning your background and your unique difference, whatever background you've had or wherever you've come from. But the unicorn ambition changes everything, because if you're building a business that, like, even from day one, you want to get to 7 figures or you want to exit at some point, that changes everything about how you position yourself now. And I think most women sit and wait to like earn the right to take up a particular space, whereas brand positioning is all about like claiming it. It's like, well, I've got this background, this is what I'm great at, this is who I am as a person, and this is the space I want to take up. This is the idea that's going to help me claim that, even if it's day one.
Ooh, tell us more about that then, because some of our listeners might be thinking, oh, I'm not sure. Obviously, I know what a brand is. I know what personal branding is. What exactly is brand positioning, Emma?
Yeah, well, for me, it's about the like position you want to occupy in a market. So your market is coaching, or coaching in a bigger space is probably also looking at training, leadership development, personal development. If you were to look at that space and look at where everybody sits in that space, where the value is in the market, really understand how that space maps and where the opportunity is flowing. What is the sort of highest value space in that market? Your brand idea is how you claim it. So I'll often do like a 4-box kind of matrix where we plot all the competitors on the market and really look at what differentiates them. And then we say, like, this is your space. This is where you are right now. This is where you need to get to, because your objective is to like upgrade your premiumize your offering, or you want to charge more, or you just want a bit of a white space. You want a opportunity to do something a bit different. You have to have a sort of strategic look at where you want to position yourself, and your brand is really just how you do that. So it's an idea. It's something you stand for. And the biggest problem in the online space is personal branding that is just you, and you being authentic, and you showing everything, and you showing up, and you being visible at all times. Because this whole like know, like, and trust thing just becomes about how much you're willing to share, and if people like you, and do they like your personality? There's no man in the world that is spending marketing dollars on being known, liked, and trusted. Like, only women are spending their marketing money on trying to be liked.
That's a mic drop, isn't it?
I don't think women need any help with that as an objective. Like, we probably need to worry about that a lot less. And I think the big problem with personal branding is that when it's based on that, it's how visible I'm willing to get, how much I'm willing to show of myself. But actually, unless there's a strategic objective, you don't know what your how you've got to show up or what you've got to say. It's just show up, hope people like
Yeah.
you. But whereas if you've got the strategy behind it and you know what you're trying to do with the brand and the business, your personal brand is just a reason to believe.
Mm-hmm. Emma, could you give us an example of how this might look for a coach?
Yeah.
Like, if you worked, I know that you've worked with coaches before, could you give us like a bit of a case study so that our listeners can understand how this might work for them?
Yeah, there's a case study on my website that I did with some work I did with an energy healer who isn't a coach, but was definitely had come out of that space. And so although she hadn't realized it at the time, she was very much playing in the I'm a better coach or I'm not like coaches space, but she was in the coaching space. She definitely saw her peers as coaches. And the biggest, a lot of my clients come to me when they're really good at what they do, but ultimately the rest of the industry are saying the same thing. Like everybody says the same thing. Everybody uses the same tactics, the same messaging. So with her, we took and also when you're so in it, like you only get served ads of people who are doing the same thing as you. You feel like you can't even see anything anymore that isn't people doing the same thing. Like you've got no frame of reference. So the biggest part of what I do is like the 30,000-foot view. So we mapped her category as personal development, and that was everything from training to biohacking to coaching to psychedelic, like everything that was in this sort of personal transformation space. And that just gave us more to play with. And what we could, like, we certainly segmented coaching into a much more like nuanced picture rather than coaching just being like one big old blob of everybody. It's like it's way more nuanced than that. And when you look at it like that, you can understand where the value is and where the danger zone is, where you're just literally going to become generic and like everybody else. So for her, we realized she's doing a master's in energy. She's not even like normal energy people, let alone like a coach. So, and she was using the same language as someone who's done like a 3-day EFT tapping course. So she's doing a 4 years master in it. She's worked for a decade. It's very different. So had to play a completely different game. And actually we realized we plotted where she needed to be, much more scientific, much more like owning her credentials. And it meant that she had more in common with psychedelic, like high-end psychedelic retreats than she did with coaching industry. So all the codes for her personal brand, for who she'll partner with, for her messaging, for how the business will evolve is all about that space. And so rather than saying I'm better than this person, which is draining, it's like just better to play a completely different game.
Wow. So it's almost like going from one huge pond of people, of competitors, to then placing yourself even in your own one, basically.
Yeah.
Wow.
It can be like the way you might be a coach in a category of one, because arguably what I do, maybe some business coaches go into brand a little bit. My brand, like the Wild Ones brand, is totally different, and like the language, the IP, the point of view on things that runs through everything is totally different.
So it's finding that uniqueness, isn't it? And actually owning it, which I think a lot of people, especially coaches, because for a lot of us, we get into coach school and it's almost like we become sheep, don't we? And we think that as long as we do these things exactly as we are being told to, then we are going to have success. And you and I both know, Emma, it doesn't work like that. It's not cookie cutter at all.
No.
And what you do, I think, is you do a lot of the work for your clients, in that you show them how they can be unique and how they can own it and actually bring more clients in, more success from totally being themselves and owning the shit out of it.
Yeah. I think the biggest problem, that kind of being yourself thing, is definitely a big point, but not probably in the way that you hear about it on the internet, because the being yourself is often visibility, exposure, show every dog walk. But actually, if your positioning is super premium, your clients don't want to see every dog walk. Like they actually don't want, that would be detrimental to your brand. So actually owning, like creating a story of your personal brand is really a reason to believe your brand positioning. So it has to be really crafted. What are the bits that we're going to pull from your background, from who you are as a person? Because people don't need to see everything.
Yeah. What would be a simple way for people listening to start to consider this, Emma? Like, what would be a couple of steps that they could maybe do, like straight after listening to this podcast, to see whether this is something that they think is worth exploring for them?
I think pulling apart your category in a understanding like how people are different, like how, because I think this coaching is coaching, or there's someone a bit ahead of me, like actually understanding where the category and where the market is shifting is a good thing to do, but also really looking at your background and who you are. And not just, it's not like your life began the day you started your coaching certification. I'm sure everybody's had a background before that. And actually, there's so much uniqueness that can be pulled from that story.
Oh my God.
I've got a brand playbook that people can download that's free, but there's 5 like reframes for the way to think about your brand and your positioning. And there's questions at the bottom of each of them. And some people have said that they've spent ages on those questions. They never thought about like their category or their own sort of personal brand in that way. And I think also, like, what are the conventions in your category? Like, what are the things that need changing? What excites you about personal development, about coaching? What's the stuff that isn't working, but everybody's just blindly following?
Mm-hmm. There's so much of that going on. I think Instagram being one of the things, isn't it? It's like so many people get stuck thinking that as long as they've got an Instagram page, they've got a business. However, then like 6 months later, when they really haven't brought any clients in, it's like, shit, I don't have a business at all. I've just got an Instagram page who Meta is showing only 10% of my stuff to. It's like...
And the trouble is that the internet is selling you tactics. So everybody's like, well, if you get this funnel, if you do TikTok, if you do Meta ads, and of course they all work, but if you don't have a consistent positioning, you don't know what to ads have changed my business. But it's only because I knew my positioning and what I was trying to achieve, and I wrote the playbook that was the lead magnet. Before that, in coaching, I mean, God, I dicked about for ages creating lead magnets that no one wanted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or 3 people downloaded, and then I was like, oh no, they don't like it, I'm not going to do that again. It's like just something I spent weeks making, but there was no consistency.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Emma, you talk a lot about being a disruptor and being disruptive. Tell our listeners about that, because I love that bloody word, and I'm all for women disrupting things. Tell us about that.
Well, that, I mean, it ties into the unicorn ambitions thing, because if you're creating a high value business, which means you're occupying a sort of high value space and you're thinking bigger than just selling your services on repeat, like you want to create a business that is eventually bigger than you, then you need to have a point of view on your market. And that is about a disruptive idea that sits behind everything. And I think like disruption and have a point of view is also thrown out there a lot. And it becomes like, oh, I'll have a few like spicy hooks or something on Instagram, or I'll have some sort of spicy one-liners on Threads. But it's not about being like contrarian or just like pending tables and being a rebel. It's about having a singular idea behind something that is like a point of view on your category that is big enough to disrupt it. And you could have that from day one, or you build it, but it's not really about how long you've been in business. It's based on what you believe in, and then how you're going to, you come up with that disruptive idea, but you need reasons to believe it, reasons that it's credible for you. And that might be based on your backstory. It might be based on who you are. It might be based on your mission. It might be based on how you do the work in a way that's slightly different to other people. But, a high value business needs a disruptive idea behind it. In the same way,
could you give us...
Well, in the same way, if you were thinking about a big brand, like I always give the example of Nike. Like if Nike behaved like women behave in running an online business, they would permanently be looking at their audience, what they need out of a sneaker, and they'll be looking at their sneakers, and they will be saying, our laces are better, we've got leather uppers now, these make you run faster. Because they've just, the two pots of insight are the audience and the product, the audience and the product. A shampoo brand, Unilever has like 200 shampoo brands or something. if they only thought about the product, probably largely the same product, and the audience, every shampoo brand in their portfolio would be the same. So positioning means I can have a portfolio and I can position them differently, and I'm going to talk in a different way. I'm going to behave in a different way. And that means this is worth more than this one. This is going to be really relevant to these people. This is going to be really relevant to these people. And so the kind of the big disruptive idea behind it for Nike, for example, it's all like it's built on a cultural insight as well as an insight about its product. Because it's like it wants to get further and further upstream, like more and more like bigger emotive, like a big mission in the world. Their insight that drives their whole business is that if you've got a body, you're an athlete. So,
wow.
And that's where Just Do It comes from. Like everybody can just do it. It's like it's Nike Running Club. It's motivational words in a shoebox. It's a poster that's a brand manifesto that's encouraging people just to get up and just do it. But equally, you can have like the NBA, like proper high elite athletes, also showing you what they can achieve with motivation at being better. But it gives you a big emotional point of view on the world that is way bigger than the product.
So do you think that, Emma, it might be worth our listeners thinking about like almost like not a mission statement, but something like that they're really passionate about, that they don't need to share with anyone else, but that almost becomes like the backbone, like the why behind their business?
But they do need to share it with everyone.
So okay.
They do, but because having a big mission is great, but then it needs to run through like a red thread through absolutely everything you do. So through your personal brand story, like how you bring that together, how your brand shows up in the world, your design, your tone of voice, your messaging, your partnerships with people, your business model, how you productize, what you call those products, how the business is going to evolve, any IP you create, like your sort of like unicorn ambitions, like my methodology, my way of working is called the reimagining, like all of those assets, everything, like, because we can all come up with a big mission and it's often, oh, I want to get more money into the hands of women, which is fine, but it's not a differentiating, it's not an idea. It's a great mission. It needs an idea to sit beneath it.
Ooh, what could that idea look like?
Well, I suppose that's what I'm doing. I mean, my big mission is to get more money into the hands of women, but actually the idea that sits behind mine is the only way you can do that is having a big disruptive idea that runs through every element of your business and being more strategic about everything you do. Wild ones are my audience. So they're people that want more, they want to build a business that's bigger than them.
Yeah.
But they're not ever going to do that by following a roadmap or downloading. They're not ever doing it that way. They need to think bigger and more with a sort of innovation mindset on the business they're building. So what people tend to do is have this big lofty vision they put on their website, but then they've got the same business model and the same messaging as everybody else. It's like, well, we can all say that, but how are you proving it? Like, because your brand and business, everything you do communicates something, from the way you write your contracts to how you send people invites to meetings, to like the wording you use on your website, to what your refund, like everything, the big stuff, but also the small stuff, everything communicates something. So if you've got a big idea behind the brand, everything needs to communicate that.
Ooh, it's like cohesion, isn't it? I guess.
They're all reasons to believe. They're all landing whereas I think people think, oh, well, I've got my TikTok strategy, I've got and actually really it's all just about visibility. But visibility of what? Because then it just becomes an arms race of who's more visible than anyone else.
I almost feel like unless you're willing to put money behind ads and things, you're playing a losing game unless you want to put like 80 hours a week into bloody social media.
Yeah, and even that, I agree, like right now, but even that, putting money behind ads isn't enough if you haven't got an idea.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just more visibility.
Emma, so what do you think our listeners, they might be thinking about, oh my God, I really need to like get on board with this brand positioning. they've come up with like a mission statement, but like a deeply felt mission statement. They've decided that they're going to start being congruent with everything that's going out there. What about like the mindset of this, Emma? Because for a lot of women, like being a disruptor, having a unicorn ambition, even thinking like, I want to stand in I call it big deal energy. That can feel stretchy for so many women. What do you think they need to hear from you?
I mean, I feel the same. I wouldn't want to be permanently visible. You won't even find me on video. This is a rare unicorn sighting of me in the flesh. My daughter is on my Instagram on video more than I am, and like literally saying you're being a bit of a baby about it now. And I'm just, so I don't think it is about endless rounds of visibility, frankly. But I think the big reframe is when you stand for an idea, it feels less scary than standing for yourself. So personal branding has often been about self-promotion. And that's why it gives people like the major ick, because that's why in corporate, no one ever goes on LinkedIn, because the only thing you've got to say is like, oh, this is the work I've done, like showing your mum your work or your grade. But actually, if you can talk about an idea, like that big disruptive idea, you're just a channel for it. Then that feels less scary than promoting yourself.
Yeah.
Changes everything, really.
I bet everyone listening to this podcast right now will have a disruptive idea in their belly that they're probably scared to say out loud. Everyone will have one.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is like disruption obviously suggests that you're trying to change something. You've got a mission for change. So in the same way Nike they want to get everybody up and moving, like everybody is an athlete. But what it isn't is, I think when people hear disruption in our sort of industry, they think they've got to throw some shade on competitors or the way competitors are doing things. And actually, I've done a lot of work in the past about like how to start a movement. And I bring a lot of that into my work now, especially with service-based entrepreneurs. They often have got a big movement behind them. They want to create a sense of change, behavioural change or attitudinal change. And it can feel that what you've got to do is throw shade at competitors because everyone's telling you to do it like this and actually it should be like this. And actually the real trick is it's never that, because that's what feels uncomfortable as well. You've just started in coaching and actually you probably think people with like 40,000 followers, there's someone that you follow and you think, I don't even think she's that good. But like, who are you to comment because you've got 200 followers? You haven't earned the right to have a voice. But actually, they are not, like, every movement needs a common enemy. And the common enemy, my enemy is not bad business coaches. My enemy is like the patriarchy, really. It's women not having access to funding, women not growing up being conditioned to think they can disrupt anything, women having too much of a sense of responsibility. So they would rather follow a roadmap than build a business that brings them joy. That's my enemy. That's why Wild Ones think beyond that. My enemy was bad business coaches. It would feel like really, I would have like a massive vulnerability hangover, I think, every time I put something out there. I think promoting yourself and blasting like your competitors is what makes people feel uncomfortable. If you're not doing either of those things, I think it changes what you need.
I love this. It's just a real deepening, because I think so many coaches can get caught up in niche drama and posting on Instagram. And it's like, actually what we've spoken about today, this is the deep stuff that can make, and obviously everyone needs to have an idea who they're selling to and what they're selling. Yeah. But however, this deepening, this is going as deeper than most people will. So that in itself will set you apart.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah,
I love this.
When I do a strategy sprint with people, it's called the reimagining. Like at the end of it, I do it all for them, because actually it's really hard to do this work for yourself. Because I always say that, especially at the start and especially in coaching, I think people overestimate the difference of their product and completely underestimate their own personal difference. So they get obsessed with selling like the logical product things. Like beyond a certain level of trust, no one cares. Like nobody cares. Like they will buy into you, like into the brand, into the mission. You know, people don't buy into Nike because they think the laces are better or like the uppers are 5% stronger than like New Balance. They just don't. Like they would buy Nike because they're just like, they are a values match for me. And also that buys me an identity that I want, is an aspirational identity. And that's even the case in like B2B marketing when you're buying business. What does your client buying into you say about them? And it won't be because you're doing 3 sessions versus 2. It won't be any of that.
What will it be then? The connection with the mission, connection with the cause, connection with the vibe?
If they were socializing it, like if they were saying, oh, I'm working with this coach, what would that be saying about them? And it would all be different. If someone was working with me, people love the idea of being a wild one. So my whole business is named around the people, not me. And they love the philosophy of like what that means. I'm a bigger thinker. I'm more creative. I'm building a high value business. I've got these big stretchy, I talk about like big stretchy ambitions, a completely different way of thinking. I'm disruptive. I've got like a little brand manifesto of what being a wild one means. And that comes through in all the messaging. And so many people say, like on my intake form, I've got, how did you come across the wild ones and what made you put in the call? And it's always about like, I just want to be a wild one. I love the wild thing. I love the unicorn. They will always pick out kind of words, but there's a sense that it's aspirational to be one of those people.
Amazing. Emma, this chat has been fantastic. Before we finish, I ask every one of my guests to recommend a business book. It can be 1, it can be 2, it could be maximum of 3. Can you hit our listeners up, please, with your favorite business or mindset book?
The Gay Hendricks Big Leap, which I'm sure everybody like, but I reread that. I genuinely go back to it and reread it. Is there one that I can add?
Of course.
Yeah.
I do show notes and I link to my little Amazon shop as well. So
there's a really good book called, it's part of the Do Lectures series, which is nothing about like the coaching industry, but it's about how to think about brand differently and how to build a real like community around your brand. And it's a really short, really action.
I think I've got that one.
It's the how to write a newsletter or something like that, but it's the guy that had the denim brand. And he, with very few resources, he builds his community through literally the newsletter. But he's absolutely crystal clear about what the brand stands for on that kind of bigger mission. So it's a really short read, but it's a really good way of like thinking about your brand in a different way.
I will definitely add the link to that one.
My playbook as well.
Yes. So can you tell us what is going on in your business? How can our listeners connect with you? Where you're hanging out online? What have you got going on?
I'm on LinkedIn a lot and I'm on Instagram. So at like the Wild One Strategy. And at the moment I'm doing all one-to-one work, and I either do kind of strategy sprints over a month or I do like a longer partnership for 6 months. I also do like one-off strategy sessions, but we work in it's a lot of done for you and done with you. It's quite collaborative, but ultimately I'm writing up the strategy because it's really difficult for people to do that alone. But round the corner, I'm launching kind of group work. So next year I'll be launching a mastermind called the Wild Society, which is quite awesome. High level for women wanting to build a kind of personal brand and business brand, and lots of inspiration for thinking differently. So we've got lots of brands coming in like Oatly and Nike and getting involved with that. And I'm also going to do a personal brand sort of short group accelerator as well over probably sort of 6 weeks.
Sounds amazing. And what about getting on your email list, Emma?
Yeah, it's all on the website. So there's the Wild Edit, which I send out every Wednesday, which is designed it's kind of stories from brands. It's like cultural, like trends kind of insight, just to give you like a midweek, like think bigger about stuff, because actually like we're all too immersed in our own category. So it's a bit random. It's a bit eclectic, but that's the point of it, that you'll just think differently about, like a bit of a kind of palate cleanser.
I love that. I've just signed up to a lot of kind of techie email lists just to find out more about what is going on outside of my industry. So I'm probably on your email list already, Emma. If I'm not, I'm going to be looking forward to that hitting my inbox every Wednesday. Oh, thank you so much for being here, Emma. You rock, and I will speak to you very soon.
Thank you, Leanne. Thank you. Bye-bye.
It's been an absolute pleasure having you listen, and thank you so much for tuning in. Come and say hello to me on Instagram at _Leanne Sia_. Head to leannesia.com if you want the show notes. And if you are ready to build your Rockstar Coaching business sooner rather than later, come under my wing, darling. Just drop me a DM and we will rendezvous.